Welcome. I'm Barbara Batson, Exhibitions Coordinator at the Library of Virginia, and like to welcome you to tonight's discussion with some amazing photographers who have created an amazing exhibition. Columbia Pike Through the Lens of Community is an installation of photographs from the work of these photographers you'll hear from in a few minutes. The exhibition is at the Library of Virginia. We're located at 800 East Broad Street down in downtown Richmond. We have parking under the building, so come. And the exhibition is open through January 8th. We are open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5. So you're welcome to come on in, take a look at the exhibition, wander and get to know us. If you have not been to the library, we've got some really cool stuff. But tonight, I would like to welcome our panelist. The moderator is going to be Sushmita Mazumdar. Sorry, Sush. And the panelists are the photographers are Lloyd Wolf, Xang Mimi Ho, Dewey Tron, and Lara Ajami. Sorry, reading my notes. So I'm going to turn it over to Sushmita, and who's going to moderate and ask the questions. We do ask you, if you have questions for the panelists, please type those questions into the chat box, and then we will turn to those toward the end of the presentation. So, Sush, take it away.
Thank you so much, Barbara. It's so amazing to be here with everybody. And, you know, I don't know how many of you have seen the exhibit at the library. I'm going to be going down next week to see it next month, actually. But we have some links in the chat, and if you haven't seen it yet, you know, as things reopen, as people start traveling, you can get a glimpse of it from our blog, where we have photographs when Lloyd visited. I'm excited to be here today in introducing you all to this amazing team, the Columbia Pike Documentary Project team, who have been working for a long time documenting the community on Columbia Pike in Arlington, Virginia. And I don't know how many of you know any photographers or are photographers, but I know a few photographers, and they kind of seem to follow one of the rules of photography. They like to keep the light. They like to be behind, right? They're not in the limelight. So today we are putting them in the limelight, and it's going to be really exciting that I get to know them better, as I'm one of the newest team members. I met Paula Endo, photographer Paula Endo, and her husband Todd Endo in 2016 while doing a project for Virginia Humanities called We Are All Arlington. That is when I heard about the Columbia Pike Documentary Project, and that is when I met Lloyd Wolf, director of the project, and we got to know each other and each other's work. And in 2018, Lloyd invited me to join on a project called Transitions. So that was the first time I met the team. And so I am the newest member. It'll be really wonderful to talk with them today and get to know them better and learn more about their work and why they do this work that they do. So I'll invite them to introduce themselves. Let's start with Lloyd Wolf. Lloyd, if you could unmute and introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm Lloyd Wolf. I'm a longtime working photographer. I try to keep us all in focus on this long-term project we have documenting our community. I've been a photographer, it's hard to believe it, but 50 years now. And I've decided with Paula Endo, and then brought in Mimi and Dewey, who I'd known from an earlier project on the Pike with Paula, to make sense of this community that we live in or near, that at the time we started was among, if not the most ethnically diverse places in the world, certainly in the country. It's still going through a lot of change. It's still very diverse. And we thought it was worth examining, and that here's people from many, many parts of the world, and largely they get along. And we thought this is worth looking at and showing and sharing and exploring. in the beginning, the work was almost entirely photographic, a few interviews done by Paula and Todd and me. Then we brought on Sush a few years ago to flesh it out, to do a more in-depth stories, which is really part of her strength. And, I just try to make the pictures the best I can, wander the street, try to be thorough. The hard part is that, you get immune to where you live, and to try to keep continually looking at it with fresh eyes. And because it's a fairly colorful place in terms of who lives there, it's been kind of eye-opening. And we think with the pictures, I thought the pictures I've made have been very fulfilling. There are, I think, over 130 languages spoken in the county. The high school that serves our area that I know Mimi went to. I can't. And Dewey, did you go to Wakefield? I don't remember.
I went to Washington Lee.
Okay, W&L, but they're very diverse schools. Also, Wakefield had about 110 languages at that school, and so we have all these cultures to photograph. If you go to the exhibition, I think one of the things that you may find surprising is this: all the pictures were taken within about a 1 mile by 4 mile area, maybe not even a full mile wide, where all these people live, work, and celebrate. And, it looks like they were taken in, name the continent, name the country, Bolivia, Vietnam, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Bangladesh, on and on and on and on. It's been fun to work with everybody. Each person brings their own unique talents to this. I guess I'll stop there.
Thank you, Lloyd. Mimi, would you like to share with us a little bit about yourself and why do you do this work?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, so I've started at teenager. I met, I was in Paula Endo teen photo program. And that's at almost the same time that I met Lloyd. So from that program itself, I also grew up in Arlington. And that's how I learned how to become a photographer through Paula and Lloyd, and then went through school to get my MFA in multimedia. And now I'm currently working as I do a little bit of fashion photography, but I'm also teaching at George Mason University, teaching photography. And I love this kind of work, and I think it involved, just because I think it started as to kind of examine the surrounding that I live in, the community that I grew up in, since I came from, born in Thailand, lived in Laos, came over here at age of 15, and just starting to really being in this new place where everybody around me is also from different place. So I feel very just kind of fit in. So it started out as a way of examining the community that I live in. And I worked with Lloyd for a very long time. And we just continuing this kind of work and seeing the shift and change in this community.
Dewey, would you like to go next? Tell us a little bit about the work you do.
Hi. I also came from the same project as Mimi with Paula Endo, and for me, I came from an immigrant family, and there's a lot of trauma, I guess, growing up in my family. So for me, like stumbling into this photography group was kind of like a lifesaver. It just gave me like this tool, and I got lucky enough to like get all this free camera stuff and development, and just like bonding with all these kids. And I never really knew it was going to be something. I just knew that we were just, here's some cameras, shoot, so it was fun to like, have an excuse to go out and explore and look for things to look at, like, what do you want to look at today? Just like so many different things, how do you frame it? Just all these basic skills that set me on this path now where I'm doing it professionally now. And just doing this, I got to know people and didn't realize how important it was to do this because things started disappearing, you know, so I just felt like it was a mission to have to go and capture it before it disappears.
Thank you, Dewey. Lara, what would you like to say?
I am, unlike everybody else here who has been doing this for a very long time. I took up photography only about 7 years ago. It was a hobby that I decided to take on more professionally. It came at a time when I had my daughter and I felt like I wanted to document every moment, but didn't like what I was looking at. So I decided to do it, to learn it professionally. I wasn't really doing it to make a career out of it. So I went into it and fell in love with photography and portraiture in specific, black and white to be more exact. Graduated with my degree in photography and media from Nova and was recommended to Lloyd by an associate professor at Nova. She is the discipline chair there, Aya Takashima, an old friend of Lloyd's or colleague, I'm not sure. Yeah, she recommended me to him, and I was very happy to take on a new experience like that, because everything I did on my own was more related to portraiture, and this was a completely new thing for me. This was street photography. I fell in love with it and took it on, and have been part of this team since 2017, Lloyd, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah, that's it.
Awesome, wonderful. So good to get to know these little details about you all who, I've only met recently. So, y'all mentioned a little bit about working in the community, and I wonder if you'd like to share with us, what does it mean to document the Pike? Like, how is it different? Like Lara, you just mentioned street photography, and Lloyd talks about that too. And you also mentioned, portrait photography, and I know Dewey does film, and Mimi does fashion, and you all do other things as well. So how would you like to tell us, how would you explain how is documenting the Pike different? How is street photography different from the other thing? And I'm sure it's different for each of you. So whoever wants to start, Lloyd, you can start.
Street, I mean, half of what I've done is street work, maybe 2/3, or just walk up and down the Pike. Some of it's been recording the physical changes and original structure of the Pike. We've been doing it long enough that there are whole sections that are gone, rebuilt, as Dewey had mentioned. Another shopping center went down last week, another one's coming down soon. Penrose, we photographed the previous shopping center, the demolition, the building, and now we've been photographing events there. Documentation is hard because you're trying to, in a way, you're dealing with the most basic part of photography, which is that it has some kind of actual relationship to what appears before you. There is a relationship between what you see and what the camera records. Of course, there are distortions based on one's choices and the nature of the camera and the medium, et cetera. But it's pretty close to it. And to document a community as dense as this one in terms of its culture has been hard. I never feel like I've done enough work. There's always more people, more places, more ways to photograph. I feel it has long-term value. It's also fun just to walk up and down the street and you meet people. We've been doing it long enough that there are people who are aware in the community what they're doing, and they'll see me and wave or stop and say thank you, what you're doing. And it's not like the commercial work or a magazine story where I'm sent in to document a place I'm not familiar with. And to do it over and over, as far as I know, this is the only project like this that's gone on this long. I mean, Paula and I were part of a series funded by National Endowment of Arts in 1979-80 to document the whole county. There were many communities documented that way at the time. We did it for a year. That's kind of typical. This has been 15 or 16 years we've been doing it. It changes the meaning and your relationship to it. I also want to, while we're at it, just give a quick thank out to the people who funded us, particularly Virginia Humanities, Dave Behringer and his crew, who've been wonderful to us. And I'm working on an Arlington Commission for the Arts grant with this right now. And we've gotten funding from Arlington Community Foundation, and the local elected officials and nonprofits have been a big help. We're networked all through this. So it's usually documentary, you think of it as dispassionate. You're distanced, you're a reporter, you're above it all. This one, we're kind of seeped into it. It's part of our lives. I find that both a challenge and a help.
Thank you. Dewey?
I feel like a bit of a spy. I'm just kind of sneaking around and like kind of being voyeuristic about just seeing like these little intimate moments that, you know, you don't see if they see your camera, then, you know, the shot's over. And I just, you know, I just want to see this sort of like truth essence about life, you know, when I'm going through and shooting stuff. And, you know, usually I just, you know, I'm just sneaking around, and there's kind of a thrill to just, you know, being hidden and like not being known what you're really doing, you know. But, and there are other times we have more like arranged shoots, you know, and we'll have like a session, we'll sit down with lights, and it's like, you know, very, very choreographed, you know, and organized. But I really like the thrill of just kind of sneaking around and looking at things and learning about life, you know, through these other people.
Wonderful. Thank you. Lara?
I definitely agree with Dewey, because part of the street photography is catching those moments that they don't know you're taking their picture. Once they spot you, it's a different reaction. That's it. That's not the picture we're the one I'm looking for. I'm looking for that picture where they don't know I'm there, and there's this really like nice picture in front of me. I just see it in my head, and you know, I just want to take that picture, but I don't want them to see me. And those, I believe, are the most successful ones. That's why I love street photography so much, because of this project. It taught me how to see people from a different angle. Usually I see them posing, and I all of a sudden don't like the posing anymore. Even when I'm taking pictures of people, if they caught me, I always smile and say, oh no, never mind, there's nothing, you know. It's not the same. It's not the same when they pause. So yeah, I agree with Dewey on that. There's a real thrill in catching that picture that nobody knows that you're taking.
Sometimes I'm shooting so much that I'm more kind of addicted to the feeling of like going out and sneaking these shots, and like I sometimes almost don't even look back at what I'm shooting. I'm just like, oh, I just like this feeling of like, where can I just feels like, you know, like you're a spy. It just feels cool. Like, I don't know, it's like probably like little boy's dream type stuff, you know, and I'm still living that now as an adult.
Just a note with Dewey, particularly when he's photographed festivals, I do the editing and post-production. He'll turn in like 3,000-4,000 pictures of, you know, Priya Bangla. And yeah, and now I know how he do it.
I'm sorry.
No, you get good stuff.
But at least more than, you know, more than not having enough pictures, you know.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What Dewey said though about some of them are posed. I mean, we did a lot of portraits for transitions that were everyone who's aware. Sometimes I did the interviews, sometimes you did. They were aware what was going on. It's a much more formal process. Some were lit, some were not. But it's completely different than when you're working at a festival or just walking down the road, who, you know, you might engage someone in conversation and ask to do their picture. But generally, the most, like Lara was talking about and Dewey, it's more interesting when you're invisible. But you know, it's, you know, you're trying to make order out of chaos and be true to the community. I mean, one of the things that I've felt with this work is that the community and general public is the audience. I mean, we're not speaking to just photographers visually, and it's important that the visual language that we're using is intelligible to the audience. So we try to make pictures that sing in a language that they can understand and want to be eloquent in that language. You don't want to dumb it down. I mean, and I really feel strongly about this, that each picture has to have art, as well as having social and anthropological and political and economic, meanings. It has to just work as a piece of art. And no amount of talking and rationalization will turn, a boring picture into an interesting one. So I think one of the reasons this team works is everybody's individually a very strong artist in their own right.
Thank you. Mimi, do you want to share about what does it mean to you to document the Pike and street photography?
Yeah, I guess it's tied to a little bit. I'm probably only one in the group that document a little bit different. So I'm more interested in things that are almost still. So I like the landscape itself of the Pike. And also when I do, I know I do a couple portraits. There is, Liz and I go into their home. I light it up using strobe, and I think pairing, because I also we have a book and I designed the book, and reading the interview and seeing I'm shoot more a portraiture style and that moment of the story that they are telling, and they invite us into their home. So the way that I document is a little different from the group, I think.
So, that's great, because the book Mimi is talking about, just for those of you who might not know, is called Transitions. That is the book she designed. That was our project. That the show was up in the George Mason University Arlington campus, and we were supposed to have our reception on a Saturday, and that Friday everything shut down because of COVID-19. And so we didn't get to have a reception, and that book didn't get out as much as we had hoped it would get out. But it is available. Again, you can look at the website. It's also in the show that is at the Library of Virginia right now. So, the book is really interesting because we're all just talking about the portraits. We see the portraits where Lloyd and I interviewed a lot of people who live on the Pike. I interviewed people who I knew, and then some people I did not know. And then, Lloyd would decide, or the photographers would decide who would go and photograph them. So in the book, we see the portraits next to the street photography, next to the festivals, all in one place. And so it brings me to, why don't you share with us about your working styles? Like, I know you said a little bit about the subject matter, how you work with different subject matter, but is there any, what is this range? There's such a beautiful range here. Some more details about your working styles and, what you'd like to share about that.
I've been doing this so I just kind of wing it at this point. It's like, when you learn to ride a bicycle, you don't think about how you're doing it anymore. And I'm very, you have to learn the technique. There's no getting around it, but at some point you learn how to do it. And then it's what you do with it that matters, how you bring it to the world. I've just, when I walk into a situation, like if it's like what Mimi does when these controlled situations, I don't overthink it. I find that if I do that, the pictures become very static. Like Lara, even when I'm working with someone directly, the public face people give you with, this big grin, it's something you might want to see from your friend or your family, but all those pictures, you don't learn anything about the person. And I think in doing portraiture, particularly whether street work or, one-on-one aware portraiture, you're learning and exchanging with that person. They may not be fully aware, and we're not fully aware either of the nature of the exchange. You're kind of holding up mirrors to each other. If you do this and you're sincere about it and have some intellect and passion with it, you'll learn how to make that work. But it's also there are a lot of surprises. You don't know. I mean, the line I use, people ask me, what's my favorite picture? My standard answer, and I really believe this, is the next one. I'm doing this to learn. Yeah, I have favorites. Yeah, but
Yeah, and we're going to get to that. Favorites, and feel free to share stories as well as you all go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm kind of a bit of a thrill seeker, so sometimes I'm like kind of in a way looking for trouble and just like pushing myself until someone like yells at me, he's like, hey, you're not supposed to be here, and then like run. But I just want to see what I can get away with. I'm kind of just following this sort of like adrenaline impulse, like, oh, look at that, and I just have to shoot the crap out of it until I get the moment, but like, or get discovered and get yelled at, but I've had some incidences where I get yelled at and it doesn't feel comfortable. I guess I could share one of the stories, but I was photographing this Metro bus passing by, and it was just passing by so quickly, I really didn't even have a photograph. And then like the bus driver just pulled over, he screeching halt, came out of the bus, yelled at me, and he's like, hey, you come here. I'm like, I didn't take the pictures. Like, delete the picture right now. I was like, I never took it. And then he just didn't believe me. He started chasing me, so I started running. And then my flash fell out of my pocket. And he's like, oh, I got your flash now. What are you going to do? I'm like, and I can't run anymore. I had to go back. He's like, you can't do this. This is America. I'm like, well, in my head, I'm not going to, add more fuel to the fire. It's like, well, this is America. I can do this. I'm in public right now, and it's like, I'm not sure what his problem is, but he was like, I'm calling my manager. I'm like, well, fine, call your manager. It's just like, I didn't do anything wrong, but it was very stressful, but I'm just like, once you get out of that situation, it's like, whoa, okay, let's do it again.
Yeah, street shooting, you run, most of the time it's harmless, but Laura and I had a silly incident this summer.
Sometimes I
won't go into it, but
Don't.
I got harassed by someone who had no brains in her head. And Laura went off on her like a...
Laura, you want to tell us about that story? Laura is just
really go off sometimes.
Yeah, most of the time people are fine, and you learn how to talk. And I've been in much hairier situations, and usually if somebody gets upset with me, I just walk away. It's just not worth it. It's a picture. It's not that big a thing. And usually if you explain what you're doing, though it does change the dynamic, it calms the situation down, in most cases.
Most cases.
Yeah. Once in a while you run into an idiot like that gal.
Exactly like that.
One of the things I've had to be aware of in the Pike with people is, that we had, a lot of immigrants and with different cultures, and different cultures have different reactions to being photographed. Also, some people may not have had all their legal papers and they might not want to be photographed, so have to be sensitive to that. Photographed in some classrooms, which, the kids all knew me because I'd go in repeatedly to Patrick Henry School, to Dahlia Constantine and Nathan, I forgot his last name for the second, classrooms. And the kids knew me, but some kids would be told by the school system, you may not photograph so-and-so, and there may be a custody issue or some other, some cultural issue. So you just work with it as best you can. And the opposite of street shooting is photographing in a third grade class, because they're all over you. Take my picture, take my picture, take my, do this, do that, the other thing. So you learn to work with their energy, those have been kind of good experiences by and large. we've also photographed mostly me, photographed in a lot of the small businesses on the Pike, though Mimi and Dewey have also, I know, and Lara, we went into that Moroccan place. You just, you tell them what you're doing, and because you don't walk in a business with a camera and just plow away. Some of them, there's a Botanica on the Pike that sells, I don't know the name of the religion. It's like voodoo, candomblé kind of stuff. And they didn't like us photographing, but our director at the time, Takis Karantonis, from the Columbia Pike Revitalization Organization, it's now on the county board, he speaks Spanish. He walked in, talked to the owner, and they were like, okay, no problem. So be able to make the pictures. Having a network within the community helps a lot in order to be able to make pictures. And sometimes it does change the dynamic a lot. I mean, there's a group I wanted to photograph this fall that I have to wait till January till they get it all straight. The place that La Cucina that trains young people in the cooking arts. They've got to get all their ducks lined up, and it'll change but we'll get it.
Lara, did you want to share a story or something about? Like I know you're from another culture. You came here as an adult, as did I, and so our stories are a little different. Maybe for me and Mimi who grew up here, and Lloyd who grew up here.
Sush, the Pike is so diverse. See, I'm an immigrant as well, so. The Pike is so diverse that you don't feel like an outsider when you're there. You just feel like you're one of them because you got all kinds of people around you. You don't look different. You don't talk different because you hear all these languages around you, and everybody looks different, and everybody comes from a different culture and dresses differently, and the colors. So you never really feel like an outsider. I learned so much about that community. I really respect how they can all live together the way they do when they really can't do it in their own countries, unfortunately. There's a certain relationship that you somehow evolves with that surrounding as time goes by. And we literally see things changing. And we literally see, like Lloyd said, there's this one picture, if I wanted to talk about a picture that I like, that I took at the Pike, at a street light. There was a small sticker stuck there saying boycott Harris Teeter. And Harris Teeter was right behind that light, a construction site. So, I'm not sure what to call it, the contrast between the people opposing this and then this new thing coming up there. It's been really a pleasure learning all this stuff about this community and how it's changing and how diverse it is. It's been a nice experience. Yes, I'm an immigrant too, so I believe all of us come from different backgrounds. We all have complete different backgrounds, right, which brings our own visions into play. And that's why we all have those different styles, because we just see things differently. We learn to see things differently. And I learned color with this project, that I can say. I learned to love color. I used to try to avoid color. I love black and white. Color did not talk to me. With this project, I look for color now. I enjoy looking for the colors and making them pop out in pictures.
There have been.
Awesome, thank you.
We have put out a few of Lara's black and whites because they work. If it works, and I've actually shot a couple now in black and white because
so it's
I'm learning
switching
from her.
That's cool. Mimi, we had you'd mentioned once about how it feels to be doing this for so long and how you've been seeing the change, right? Like you'll have been documenting it. How does it feel to kind of see something you've shot before and then see it's changed? Do you want to talk a little bit about that? That'll be great.
I think because I grew up there, is this really just emotional attached to it. So that it's more like, as an artist documenting the place, but also as just a child who I first moved to the US. Arlington is where my family kind of there, settled there. So I seeing, building that no longer there anymore, restaurant that no longer there anymore. It's definitely like quite emotional, but to see the images of the place itself, it's quite, I think it's something very special. And I, like Dewey mentioned, I didn't know how special the project was until really, I guess 10 years later, looking back, and you have a piece of, you part of these projects that documenting a history of and the changes is quite special. And well, I guess to answer that question, is quite emotional, just because I grew up there, and now I'm out in Loudoun County now. I'm no longer in Arlington, but still seeing the place going through so much changes so fast as well.
Thank you. Such wonderful, such wonderful stories. So we come to the question of a favorite picture. I mean, Lara shared one. Does anybody else have, it doesn't have to be in the show, but just, remembering a favorite picture or an experience, like, so many of you mentioned, it's the feeling of taking that shot or being in a place, the feeling of being in a place. If you all want to share about a favorite picture. And then our audience can go and see the show and see if that picture is in there or not.
I have two, and the word, when you said experience, it did it. And well, maybe three. The very first set of pictures we did was I did them for at Paula's suggestion. They're actually a little from before the Pike project fully got fleshed out. I was at Tyrrell Hill Park, and there were, little ethnic, it's in, the community's changed its name. So it used to be Columbia Heights West. And there were people from all over in native celebratory dress. And I'm going, this is happening in my neighborhood. And this is really who's here. And that led to one of our friends and neighbors owns a restaurant. She's Bolivian, Claudia Salazar. And she said, oh, there's going to be Oruro Festival, in a week or 2 weeks. It's a Bolivian dance troupe. And we have a lot of Bolivian dance troupes in the county. And she said, you should go check it out. And so I did. And there were about, I think, 3,000 people in the dance troupes, another couple thousand watching, coming up 4 Mile Run Drive to the Pike. And it was just so much color. I felt my camera was going to explode. It couldn't handle that much color. And the sounds, and I was just standing in it, and I got almost in a trance, a happy trance. There's nobody around me. I was in a near weeping with joy state, just, oh my God, this is where I live. And some of those pictures in there. And a similar one, as we're about to photograph it again in a week or so, is we've made a relationship with the Bangladeshi community through Priyal Karmakar with Priyo Bangla. They've been doing it for, 10 years now, some number like that. And that's another one where just being there, Dewey and Lara have also photographed successfully there. And it's just a joy to be in it. It smells good. It looks good. The people are nice. And the experience I like to relate there is the first time I photographed it, the Bangladeshi festival, the first act on the stage was like Cambodian dancers, and then there were Appalachian cloggers and some Irish step dancers, and then there was a Chinese fan dance, and then there was some Bolivian or Peruvian dancers before the Bangladeshi pop star ever showed up. And I thought, this is amazing, and the colors are very lush and people are very friendly. I've made friends in that group too. Same kind of experiences at some of the Ethiopian. I just was with Dewey a couple months ago at an Ethiopian festival. That was just, we had to stop. The light was too beautiful. It was so amazing music and colors, swirling. I don't have to go down to the Smithsonian and see folk life festival on the mall or travel to Mongolia. I've had the same experience at Mongolian festival. That and the pictures that come out of that, I think, reflect, I hope, successfully my interactions with those things.
I think that's what people in the chat, I see color, color, color. I think that joy that you are mentioning about that color brings you as an artist. I'm an artist and a writer. And as an artist, I explored that. I work with that a lot. The effect of color on each person and how. And Lara had a story. Everybody, I just love this. Mimi, Mimi, do you have a favorite picture you want to talk about?
I could talk about one. Okay. I had a lot of fun with that shoot with Lloyd because it was like, I'm like thinking out loud with photography. And I'm like, oh, Lloyd, get that right there because I'm thinking differently because I'm shooting a video. So, but, in contrast to what I was just talking about earlier with, doing this sort of like sneaking around, like this other shoot was more of a photo shoot where I brought lights in, but it was with this barbershop called International Barber. And they had like different people specializing in different things, and these ladies are helping other people look beautiful. And I came in and like, I want to photograph you guys, and like I don't know if they ever talk to each other because I guess they run their own little businesses. Each chair is their own business, and I brought these lights in and it felt really special, and they felt like happy that I was giving them so much attention and having them interact with each other. And I was just happy that they were just feeling special that I would give them this sort of attention. They just work every day and they don't really think that what they're doing is special at all. And I thought it was fun. And I just felt like it was a mission for me to make something look really nice for them and told them like, yeah, this is going to be in the show or something like that. And just, it's just fun to see this dynamic image come together. But I'm just shooting the same thing, but I'm looking for the right, emotions and dynamics between everyone looking at each other. And it was fun. That was probably one of the most, but that's very different from just running around sneaking. So there's an art to both of them. And I can enjoy both arts.
Such a range of experience and connection or not connection. Thank you. Mimi?
Actually, yeah, I love I remember going into I think with Lloyd with she's a teacher from Patrick Henry, right? And I was able to meet her and her husband, and Lloyd did the interview, and it was just I love the idea to be able to go into people invite you into their home and you able to photograph them in their space. My favorite image too is probably one of the Dewey pictures of a man in his grocery, because there's an Asian grocery, and that's a grocery that my family go to when we live there. So I think seeing my Kali images also bring me just so much joy, because it I think Lloyd and Dewey documenting a lot of more business that you're going into. So maybe no longer there anymore. So those kind of images really, I really like them a lot.
That was a little sad taking those photos for that business, because I grew up going there too, but it's like I never had a chance to talk to him until I photographed them. And it's just like, I'm only getting it now because it's the end, and then he's telling me his plans, like he's leaving the country. I'm like, oh man, I'm never going to see him again. So it's just a little bittersweet.
So there's a lot of story attached to, I think, the people and the places that we photograph.
Yeah. And I'm so glad to hear these from you, because we see all the visuals that you all put out and all the images, but these stories, I think, are so powerful. We interview everybody else. So I'm so thrilled to be doing this.
I mean, one nice thing about this kind of photography is it sort of like gives you a passport into people's lives. If you just walked into somebody's house and started taking a picture, that if you're lucky, they'd just throw you out, right? Right. And you go, hi, I'm here to take pictures and tell me all about your life. And we're doing a documentary. And they go, okay. And then boom, the door opens. and then something transpires. I mean, Lara and I went and photographed Joan Mulholland, who's a, a freedom rider, a civil rights veteran. I happen to know Joan, but you just hang out in her house and all this stuff comes out, and it's like there's a relationship that goes on, and oh yeah, we have to do some pictures too.
Yeah.
That's something I like doing, and I think it's meaning. I hear your doggy.
Sounds like a beagle.
Yeah. So I noticed a lot of stuff in the chat. We're going to get to it a little bit, but
Yes.
about color, I made a decision with color. I used to do all my documentary work in black and white for a variety of reasons. Partly it was film, I could control it, but I used to feel it was more timeless. It took things out of time context. And then I had a real change of thinking, partly from my own work, but that, during the greatest known documentary photographs in the United States are the Farm Security Administration pictures during the Great Depression by, that Walker Evans ran. And those, we all know those pictures: Migrant Mother, the Okie, and, the storm in Oklahoma, and hundreds of pictures that are part of the national psyche. And they're all I thought they were all in black and white. Well, I stumbled into a book that turned out it had been a show at the archives. Those people were also shooting color at the end of the late 30s and early 40s. And I felt if a documentary work purports to show what it feels like to be in a place, what it's like to be there, color is less abstract. It's closer to what you see. That's not to take away from black and white. I still do it, and I'm probably going to still shoot a few of them for this. But I made a commitment with that if you're trying, and particularly for historical purposes, the Library of Virginia and Arlington are preserving this work so people can study it over time. They're going to have a much clearer sense of what it's like to be here, what it's like to stand on a corner here, to talk to somebody in the color pictures than they're going to have in black and white. You can make the argument for black and white too, but I really feel for this kind of documentary where you're trying to show how a community looks, feels, exists, its ethic, color is has been the way to go. And frankly, the Pike, architecturally, it ain't much. It's the people that are interesting.
Thank you. That is very, and when I think of culture, you cannot take color out of it. So taking color out is actually an intentional choice, which of course you can make depending on whatever you want to present. But when I think of cultures, I think of colors. So it's just, it's interesting. This discussion is bringing that up. It's really interesting. So we had planned to have a question and answer session. And I think a lot of, a lot more stories and things will come out when we're answering the questions that are in the chat. So, Elizabeth, let's do it.
Yes, thank you guys so much. That was amazing. One of the first questions was, is there anywhere that you can find the interviews of the people you photographed over the years?
I'll let Lloyd answer that.
Yes, on our blog, which I believe is in the chat.
Yes.
And there are a handful in our book, which is available through the Library of Virginia. If you go to their gift shop, you can see it there. And also the interviews that Sush and I did in much more depth are in the most recent book, Transitions. They're with the accompanying photographs. They're in the exhibition too, quite a number of them, though not all. I think we had 20 in the book, some number like that. And some of them are really quite in depth and worth reading. I just got feedback from a friend in Richmond about how much a particular person's interview meant to her. So the Transitions book, go to the library's gift shop site, and it's very easy to find them.
Wonderful, thank you. Our second question was, what is the secret to staying together over decades?
Anyone else want to answer that one?
I've
We
been
don't
with this
all live in the
project
same house.
for so long. I mean, it's like a family to me already. So I don't see it any other way, really.
Right. We're all pretty independent people, and we all have independent projects and jobs and families. We come together for this. I mean, I've known Mimi and Dewey since they were teenagers, but made a connection back then. It does feel like family at this point, and friendship. Lara and Sush and I get along real well, and I think respect. And the fact, that I think the fact that we are real diverse helps. I also want to give a shout out. There've been a couple of other photographers on the team. Moises Gomez was with us for a while. He's now married and living in Texas. And Alexandra La Cueva, who's going to be in Virginia in December, Mimi and Dewey, who haven't met her, or haven't seen her in a while, was also part of the team. Moises is from Columbia. Alexandra is from Russia, basically. I don't know. One of the interesting things is when Paula was still on the team, she's retired now, and we had a little get together, and I said, everybody bring food, like a potluck. And I realized at that point, I was the only non-Asian on the team, because you guys brought like pot stickers and like sesame noodles and stuff, and I had brought bagels.
Hey, that's diversity right there.
Right. And I realized, that's what we eat here, So for what it's worth, I had vegetarian carry-out Ethiopian food tonight, and for what's worth, Laura and I have talked about this. I have family in Israel. She's originally from Syria. If we were back in the Mideast, we'd be talking to each other over weapons. We wouldn't be allowed to speak to each other. And here it's like we leave that foolishness behind, and able to deal with each other as human beings. I have a saying, because, Laura's seen it too, and Dewey's parents and Mimi and, have seen troubles in the world. And, I have this line about, this is what peace looks like. Not that the Pike is perfect, because it's not, and there are tensions, and there are issues, but by and large, people get along. And this to me is a model for how the world could be, should be. The food's real good. And I think the fact that our team is that way, we each bring to it a lot of strengths, and there's a lot of respect between us, and distance. We're not in the same house all the time. Makes it a little easier.
I think that actually sort of like piggybacks on another question. Is how do you approach photographing people from cultures and experiences different from your own? How do you avoid falling into reinforcing stereotypes?
Anybody else want to try that one?
I can talk about that. If I think when you live in the community and you study it and you experience it, like Lara was saying, you kind of become one, you become a part of it. And so you're not actually observing them as different people. Like one of the things that I did, I chose to live in Arlington 22 years ago when I came here from India. I chose Arlington because of the diversity. And I felt like Lara was saying, when I walked on the street, I felt like I'm from here. I blended in, I fitted in. And so I think that is a part of what makes us feel like we understand each other. But I think, we are always careful. We are always conscious of this, not showing them in the wrong way or stereotyping because of the range. So, when you see the photographs, there's such a range of how people appear to us in the way that they want to appear to us, and we are just documenting it. I get to talk to people, so they tell me what they want to tell me, and I just write it all down. So, and I check with them before we print it. The team works like that. I will transcribe what they told me, and I share it with Lloyd, and then I'll say, let me check back with them. Do you really want us to publish this? And then they might change their mind, and that's fine. But if they say, no, I want you to say that, and then we put that in, So at least that's how it works for me.
It's hard. I mean, I don't think in terms of stereotypes. I guess I've learned it over time because I didn't like being stereotyped as a young person. There's so many people here from so many places, and everybody's kind of a little more open-minded and used to trying to adjust to other people's stuff. I mean, sometimes I'll have to ask. There's a couple of things that I've learned that have been tough. The Mongolian festival, their national drink was a bit tough for me. It's fermented mare's milk. And you just drink it and smile, and people see that you're welcoming. And if you listen to people, and if you say, am I getting this right? Do I understand? They can tell when you're trying. If you barge in and tell them what to do, they can tell that too. I have particular sensitivities growing up in this area. I grew up in the area when the ethnic groups were pretty much just Southern white and Southern black and government workers, of which my father was the latter. My father was a refugee himself from Germany in the 30s. And you just, I mean, I guess maybe I felt like an outsider and trying to fit in when I was a kid at some level into mainstream culture. And then now we live in a place where there is, I don't even know what Arlington's mainstream culture is. I guess it's diversity, at least in our part of the county. That's just how it is. I mean, I just haven't posted them yet, but I just interviewed a woman whose father is Sikh, from India, grew up in Thailand as his whole life. After the partition in 1947, his family fled. He married an Ecuadorian woman. They have their daughter. We just interviewed their daughter. What's the stereotype there? And that's not that uncommon here. Multiracial is kind of, it's not the norm yet, but it's not uncommon. And people are just living, I guess one thing that's interesting is that there's no one clear ethnic enclave on the Pike. There's no Chinatown, there's no Little Italy. People are all living mixed together. There are some focus areas, but it's all blended, and it makes it easier.
Well, I think that's sort of a lovely segue again to the last question I have. What do you all hope for the future of Columbia Pike?
Dewey, take it.
I mean, it's like what Lloyd said earlier. I mean, I hope this sort of microcosm that we live in Arlington is going to be the sort of blueprint for the macrocosm of not just the United States, but the world. And for me, diversity has been so normal that it feels kind of not normal when it's not diverse. I get a little uncomfortable, but it's just like, it's so normal that I just love, I think people are usually thrilled that you want to know their culture. So, but sometimes there's also people who have gone through a lot of trauma, and I can understand that. And they don't want you to photograph them or interview them, but and when I'm talking with them without the camera, I'm just like, oh man, there's so much here that I wish people could know about. But, those are some of the missed opportunities that I'm just going to have to respect, and figure out how to transform into some other type of art some other time.
If I may jump in too, I just want to point out, when I worked on that project I talked about earlier called We Are All Arlington, we documented the legacy of immigrants in Arlington over 40 years. And there was a whole neighborhood called Little Saigon in Clarendon, what is today Clarendon, and that's pretty much all gone, right? And so for me, working on this project is like, look, we have another chance. We have another chance that this is here, and how can we make this stay while changes come, right? So that we don't forget and it doesn't become another lost story. And so shows like this, books like this, and archiving the material here, and finding ways to keep that keep that intact while things change, to kind of find that balance, I think also a very important thing for people to know, that it can be done and it should stay. And we've lost some things, but some things we can keep. I also wanted to just thank Kathleen Avila for sharing in the comments. She says, I just wanted to mention the Botanica on the Pike is the practice of Santeria, not voodoo. So thank you so much for that. And that's how we learn.
Thank you. I didn't know the word. To answer the question about the future of the Pike is hard. There is a strong community ethic here about embracing diversity. That's why we call the first book, Living Diversity. And I think that's community wide. I think the elected officials feel strongly about that. And a lot of the citizens, but there's very rapid gentrification going on, and it's a problem. Well, maybe that's not the right word, but it's accelerating. Amazon is putting its headquarters just a mile from the end of the Pike, and real estate values are going up. And a lot of the interviews we do and people we talk to talk about the economic pressures are real. But to try to hold on to some of the diversity and the people who live here have made the community what it is are important. I've learned about the importance of affordable housing efforts. We've done work with AHC and APA, as partners in this, and hopefully that will be able to change. I'm concerned, though, to be realistic, about I think we may hold on to a certain amount of ethnic diversity, but I'm worried that the economic diversity will disappear. It was traditionally home to mostly sort of working class white and African American, Black, whatever the current word is appropriate, mostly, and then heavily Southeast Asian, and then Central American, and then the whole world: Ethiopian, Eritrean, Bolivian, Tajiki, Azerbaijani, etc. And I think we'll have, because the tech world is somewhat diverse, they'll probably retain some of the ethnic diversity, but I'm afraid that a lot of the folks we have here may be priced out. There are efforts to hold on to it. Only time will tell. Susha's point about, Little Saigon, what we used to call Ho Chi Minh Trail in Clarendon, when the Vietnamese population first arrived here in the mid-70s. I think there's one Vietnamese business there where there used to be 50. Most of them are now in Falls Church, but the community evolves. We're still getting an influx of, right now we're getting Afghans because of the situation overseas. And there's still a Mongolian influx, so they're mostly moving from another area in the county. We'll see. I don't know. I do worry about it.
Yeah. Are there any other thoughts or comments that anyone would like to make? Well, I would really love to thank you all. This was an amazing presentation. We really appreciate it. We will be posting the video on our social media sites and also on YouTube very shortly. I will definitely let each of you know when we do that. And thank you guys so much for this incredible conversation. If you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share, please feel free to do so. And otherwise, we will just say good night for this evening.
Actually, Elizabeth, I see one more question, which I think we missed. Alberto asks, is there an audio archive too?
Yes. Sorry, I missed that. Thank you.
Yeah, me too.
Is there a what archive?
Audio.
I think I turned that into the library. It's not tape. I record my interviews. but they're, I have not recorded them for, sound quality. It's just enough so that they can be transcribed. Then we may be using a little bit, we're creating a short video, Mimi and Dewey and I, for our next phase of the project, which is called The Road Ahead, which is relevant to your last question. Sush and I will be interviewing young people and their view of the Pike. But I don't know if those sound archives are, I'm pretty sure I turned them in, but they're more coming, but they're not, they get pretty chopped up, cut and pasted by the time they're into text, but we do have them, some of them. I mean, Sush does them by hand just for what it's worth. A story that I can tell on her, a good one, is she interviewed Mr. Barua, who is Bangladeshi. Sush speaks Bengali, and apparently she interviewed him in Bengali and took her notes in English simultaneously, which pretty amazing. So,
I think that's a good question about the audio, because I know, as a person who speaks multiple languages, I know how it changes, how people will, give you an interview, right? If they are comfortable, if they are speaking in their language, they connect in a different way, they get comfortable in a different way. And that's why I think for this new project, we did decide to take audio to record voices, accents, children, adults, elderly, whatever we can get. And that was a conscious decision, because I find, as the one with the accent out here, like I find that's important. That is, very much the audio is very much part of the culture and what we need to document. So maybe I'll keep that in mind for the project going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We're so looking forward to partnering with you again. Thank you so much to each of our panelists, to everyone who joined us tonight. Again, we will post the recording very soon, and keep in touch. Come see the exhibition. It is amazing. And thank you again so much. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.